I'm Donna Palmer.
Hi, I'm Jeff Human.
Jeff Human.
Yes, hi.
Hey, you're gonna say your name.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Bob is, yeah.
I joined almost a year ago, maybe a year ago, pretty close to it.
I know Gus. Fill the vacancy left by Jay.
Who else is, oh, and then there's Jennifer.
No, well, sometime if
And
he's on the
of course, I
DDA
can't
still,
read the
so.
name. I asked Bob to send another reminder to everybody, you know, Bob's on his way or whatever.
Oh,
you keep them.
Oh, excellent. Jay served on the planning commission, so he's blown up, but long time.
We got what? Record?
It is.
Oh, it is recording. All right.
All
All right, we're all set. So I'm gonna call the special meeting of the Board of Trustees, Planning Commission and DDA, specifically to focus on the Jackson Road corridor to order, and it is 7:03. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we just need to adopt the agenda, which is primarily we kept our typical agenda, but we have no business or approval of meetings, reports, or anything. We're just focusing on the Jackson Road corridor this evening.
So only planning commissioners to vote?
No, we have no voting.
Oh.
This is totally a working session. We're not taking any action this evening at all. And so with the roll call, what I want to do is if people we'll do roll call introductions, all right? So if I'll just start, I'm Jan Culbertson, Planning Commission Chair, and I'll go this way.
Doug Lewan, Township Planning Consultant.
Kathy Knoll, Township Trustee.
Jeff Human, Township Planning Commissioner.
Donna Palmer, Township Treasurer.
Joyce Parker, Township Manager.
Will Hathaway, the supervisor?
I'm Ryan Abel, I'm a member of the DDA.
Jillian Carey, Trustee, Chair of Road Advisory Committee. Jeff is on the committee as well. Kim Moore, Planning Commission.
And Chris Chang, Planning Commission.
Right, and I think we have Bob Hyde from the Planning Commission online.
Yes.
And any other elected or appointed or committee officials online that we want to make sure
Chief Hood is.
Chief Hood is here, all right,
His phone number, I don't know.
okay. Is phone anyone who is on a committee?
If it is, raise your hand and I'll jump up. Good.
All right, and then with us currently in Township Hall, we have
Pat Shields, I'm on the Roads Advisory Committee in the CBA.
Kathy Juskevich from the Sustainability Committee.
Kathleen Brandt, Scio resident and Compensation Commissioner.
yeah, and I think we have enough chairs. We have a couple more people coming, but we have chairs, so if you'd like to come up, we invite you to come up and join the rectangle. And online, who else do we have? Oh, I think we have
Pam Boyd.
Pam Boyd,
Pattinson.
Rob Pattinson,
Chief Hood.
Chief Hood, and a phone. And hopefully we'll be able to recognize the phone.
A free agent.
A free agent, yeah.
May I make a request?
Yes.
This TV.
It's not working. Yeah,
You can request.
you can request, but
What do I need
we need that magic wand.
86103.
All right,
We're probably gonna wanna turn our chairs at some point because everything's gonna be on.
Oh, it's Riser.
Oh, that right?
yeah, is it John Reiser? Okay, great,
Let me add him as a panelist.
okay. Thank you. And then while we're adding John as a panelist and also Bob Hyde as a panelist.
The agenda.
Okay, great. I'd like to move the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or revisions? Moved by Commissioner Moore,
I'll second.
support by Commissioner Chang. All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. On to public comment, and with that, folks that are here of the public, if you have any comment at this point in time, the intent is that this is going to be a discussion. Our planning consultant is going to lead us through a little bit of a history, and the goal of this evening is to because people have, we have Donna who was just recalling the initial vote to make Jackson Road a boulevard. And our planning consultant has been here for 20 some years, to folks that have been on the planning commission a year. So the goal is for everyone to have sort of the basic foundation of, where we are and how we got here, and then talk a little bit about the future. And in planning, you're not talking about like the next year or two, you're really talking like 20 years. And as Donna said earlier, you really don't know, the impact of your decisions for that many years. And so it's, I think, good for people that have different perspectives, the DDA, the trustees, different histories. We have Joyce who's new, to really come together and get that foundation and then talk about what are our current challenges, what are our opportunities, what do we see as this really important, because it is where the utilities are, where the transportation is, and what is the Jackson Road corridor and how do we see it out there in another 20 years, and what are our hopes and dreams. So that's sort of the purpose of this evening. So with that public comment, is there anyone here who wants to, before we get started, contribute?
Everyone get a chance,
Yeah, and we will encourage, as we're doing the visioning and so forth, the idea, it isn't a public visioning session, but it is, a working session, and we certainly value everybody's contributions.
I'll make public comment. Sure. Kathleen Grant. I've read a lot of these materials and I understand the underlying methodology. So I have a question. Who on the Board of Trustees has read the entire master plan? Yep. I mean, the textual stuff. I know there's at least one board member who told me he looked at the tables, and the meat of it is in the language. And that's why I personally objected to Heritage Woods. It was not in keeping with the language of the master plan. So I would ask that same question to the Planning Commission. Have you all read the master plan? We created it. Well, the answer that way. I've been through it.
I went through line by line.
Line by line.
I figured that. There might be one person that hasn't read it. And then of course I would have asked the same with the DDA, but I'm pretty sure Ryan is well versed. He's pretty well versed. Are there any implications to the DDA not having quorum here?
No votes are being taken.
Yeah, it's just a working session. It's a public meeting.
Yeah,
Just wondered.
I did speak with the chair, and they will be in future. It's just summertime vacations. It just happened to fall.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you.
And then another comment, is it possible to write zoning regulations to encourage sit-down restaurants and discourage drive-throughs? Is it a what? Are there ways to write the regulations to encourage sit-down restaurants?
Yes.
In my view, sit-down restaurants benefit the residents, and drive-throughs benefit people on I-94 and residents. But, I don't think it's a sustainable model for Scio Township to keep encouraging driving cars. So if we could do that, I would think that would be excellent. Also, I don't support having PUDs outside of the sewer district. I specifically said the sewer district because I have learned that the water district is pretty much the entire township. So if there's a water main there, it can be tapped into. I especially have concerns about Heritage Woods, that they are extending the water line up to Baker and Marshall, which potentially allows for development up Baker Road, which is not in the sewer district. And I would hate to see that an uninformed board approved another public-private wastewater system. I thought that was a huge mistake, and that was related to my comments about reading the master plan. And then here's another thing. I heard through scuttlebutt that Doug Luan is leaving Scio Township in November. Is that correct?
It's somewhat correct, but not exactly.
Okay, then I think this is a perfect time for Scio Township to transition to a full-time staff planner. I think this is something we've needed for a long time. I think the economics favor that we get a full-time planner versus a part-time consultant. I think a staff planner will work in the best interests of the entire township, developers and residents. More on the resident side, I believe there's a bias currently for developers. I cited an example, Heritage Woods. Mr. Luan stated in April 2021 that the developers for Heritage Woods came to the Planning Commission and said they're interested in buying that property. He advised them to wait because we're starting a revision of the master plan. And so that developer waited, and miraculously that piece of property became part of the Baker Road gateway. And it was targeted as high value preservation land. So that, I think, was some action that benefited that developer so far as to make it impossible for the farmers, the owners, to consider an easement because their land immediately jumped in value. And they had earlier been interested in putting under easement. So that's all I have right now. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. And is there anyone else online? Please raise your hand.
Oh, there's a couple.
Yeah, it kind of blends in with the sun.
But I can also, if you want. When I get started. Rob Pattinson, you have the floor.
Okay, did you wanna?
Yeah, where's the camera?
Yeah, we have, it's over all of us. so
Oh,
you
all right.
guys- yeah.
Rob, thanks for all of your comments as usual. You had a lot of good insights. I don't know about Jeff's status. It's possible that Mav has other property in the DDA district. I'll look into that. I know that Jay Holland has property in the DDA district, so I think he's still qualified, but I will double check that too.
I dispute that he has property. He moved out of Scio Township in 2011. It's been 12 years now.
That's his residence.
His business license is listed for his Gregory, Michigan address. He pays no taxes in Scio Township. He pays taxes.
I'm not sure that's true, but we can look
I'm not
into
done.
that.
He pays taxes in Livingston County. He does not pay taxes in Scio Township.
I
I
think if,
object.
yeah, well, I think looking into it is
Yeah, that's all I can do.
what you can do.
Well, no, you appoint, so you can do more than that.
And well, yeah, you need to look at the facts.
Well, and regarding the scrap pieces of land, if I remember correctly, they're just like little corners. I mean, I don't think there's any big, like the one at the corner of Parkland Plaza and Jackson Road, you know, that's.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with Andy, fire chief, about this question, whether any of them, you know, would constitute, you know, enough space, and he said no. I don't think they're large enough to host a farmer's market, although someone did ask about using one to hold a rummage sale. That's the one at the corner of Stabler and Jackson. We thought about that for a split second and thought that would just be a traffic hazard. The only piece of land that the township owns in the Jackson Road corridor that could conceivably be large enough is at the very end of Stabler. And that's not suitable for a fire station either. You need a fire station to be right on the main road. It has to, you know, you don't want your fire fire trucks to have to cover that extra distance. That sort of defeats the purpose. So, but that's a very good question, Rob. And actually, I did talk with the chief about this. He has some vacant parcels out on the west side of the township that he's got his eye on. And if the voters approve the ballot proposals, there will be funds that could, in theory, be used to secure land for a fire station for future expansion.
I wanted to respond to Rob. Rob, there are some schools in Scio Township. There's Honey Creek School up by WISD. There's High Point School.
The one next door.
They're in the same building.
They share the same playground.
as, it's a private school, but they used to be a voting site, a precinct for Scio Township. They no longer are, but we have schools. in
Well, I think what he
Scio
meant
He meant
is a
public schools.
playground is, I think what he was trying to get at.
Recreational park.
Recreational
Well,
facilities that a
Township.
school.
But he said there were no schools.
Yes, and
Yeah.
actually High Point, Honey Creek is a public charter facility that people do have access to the play equipment there.
They do, and there's also some ISD has mentioned trying to link into some of the neighborhoods too, because there really isn't any sort of pedestrian access to that campus. So, all right.
Okay, one more hand up. With Pam Boyd. Pam, you have the floor. Or two, I just.
Thank you.
There.
Thank you, Pam Boyd. I have actually a simple request. As this is a innovative and never before kind of meeting, would you all possibly consider having a public comment at the end of this meeting? I have nothing to offer, but I'm sure it's going to be an interesting process going forward. And if there is time, if you don't go until 2 a.m, I'd appreciate an opportunity for a public comment later. Thank you.
Let's all promise not to go until 2.
Yeah, I'm like, the point of this meeting, this special meeting we set aside is so that we spend the time talking about and interfacing with ideas about the Jackson Road corridor. So I like to hear from the public, but I want to make sure that we're focused on that tonight. I was the one that suggested the special meeting, and there's plenty of time for public comment. I don't want to shut down public comment, but I, for one, would be against another public comment time during tonight's meeting.
But if some member of the public wants to join the conversation about the Jackson Road corridor, that would be okay, wouldn't it?
I think this is a working session for the DDA, the Planning Commission, and the Board of Trustees.
I think we can manage it and if people will be judicious in their comments and focused in their comments, I appreciate everyone's ideas. So with that, I think we will. So if you have something, that you think is a good idea and a contribution and you want to raise your hand, we'll kind of keep an eye on the screen
And
too.
sometimes, the public comments in the beginning, they're just whatever has come up for them, but when they listen at the end, they may have other insights. And that's why I like having the 2 public comment sessions. And, the residents, we're serving them and they should have a voice.
We are serving them, but we're also here to achieve some kind of, conversation, discussion about trying to move forward on the Jackson Road corridor.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm not against public comment, and I'm not against the public.
No, I'm not
But I
saying
am
that.
against meetings that don't achieve anything in the end.
Oh, I
And
agree with
I
that
want to
too.
spend the time talking about the subject at hand. That's my only point. But I'm just one person. I just want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying.
And I leave it open. We'll go and see how the flow is, because I want to hand it over to Doug so he can get through that foundational content. So then we can get to some of the ideas and we have a kind of a SWOT exercise to do.
Okay. Before we start, since the cat's out of the bag, I just want to mention a couple things. This was supposed to be a letter or note going to the Township Board, but I'll just real briefly. After being in planning for 35 years, I am stepping down as Vice President Carla Wortman Associates, and that will occur. Last day in the office will be the Friday before Thanksgiving. I will still be working for Carla Wortman Associates, so yes, I'm leaving, but no, I'm really not leaving. I will just be taking a support role in doing. I want to get into more project work, so I'm going to be doing more master plans, corridor studies, zoning ordinances, development review, working more behind the scenes with our staff, Laura Krebs from my office will be assigned to continue working here at the township and doing office hours and attending planning commission meetings and that sort of thing. So I'm not technically leaving, but I'm taking a step back. And I'm doing this for family purposes. This is actually, I'm very happy about this. My wife is very happy about this. I figured at one point, in my career, conservatively thinking going to about 4 to 5 planning commissions a month, which typically I go to 3 a week, 2 to 3 a week in various communities throughout the state of Michigan. I've spent almost 7 years of my life in a planning commission meeting, and that's 7 days a week for 7 years. So I think my wife is right in wanting me home a little bit more at this point in our lives. So with that, it's been, I'm not going anywhere. So, and I still will be subbing for Laura at planning commission meetings occasionally, things like that, after, as we head towards the first of the year. So with that, definitely took the cat out of the bag there. That's fine. Well, it was partially true, not fully true. So with regard to this, with regard to tonight, we've been talking a lot at the Planning Commission about various projects that have occurred before us. And there's been a lot of discussion about the Jackson Road corridor, about how we would like to see it develop in the future. We've talked about things like more residential, more high density residential, more, perhaps commercial, perhaps nodes of commercial, making it more walkable, allowing folks to cross Jackson Road. So there's a lot of discussion points that are going around, but they're kind of coming from a lot of different directions. And so we were talking, and Kim's right. She suggested, let's stop talking about this in a piecemeal way, and why don't we get together for a meeting to start putting some of these ideas on the table. And that's really what we're here for tonight. So we're here, I'm not coming to you tonight with, here's my plan from Carlisle Workman Associates. We have existing plans that we're gonna go over in a few minutes. But I want to hear from the planning commissioners, township board, any members from the DDA. By the way, we're taping this, so members of the DDA can watch this later if they would like. So I would like to get comments from all of you on how you think the corridor has developed over time, what you'd like to see within the corridor. We have some constraints, which we'll talk about, and all of that. I'm going to start with talking about some of our existing plans that we have within the corridor, the current master plan that was adopted in 2021. The Jackson corridor plan that's part of the master plan. Go over some maps that are within that, within the master plan. We're going to talk a little bit then about zoning. So we're going to talk about existing planning, existing zoning. Primary zoning for the Jackson Road corridor is the JROD. We call it the JROD, the Jackson Road Overlay District, probably one of the best acronyms I ever came up with. It sounds like a certain New York Yankee, but it's so the JROD. And then we're going to talk a little bit. I've got some mapping on his existing sewer service area. Sally's on the line, and she'll be able to help answer any questions. Again, all this is to kind of give everybody background about what's going on. And then after we're done, so we have a master plan that's not that old. It was adopted in 2021. And so you see on the agenda here, I say, well, we have a master plan. That's a start. So now what do we do? And incidentally, just keep this in the back of your mind. Just because we updated the master plan 2 years ago now, going on 2 years ago, master plans don't have to wait for 5 years. You can update an entire master plan. A community can do it every year if they want, or you can take select parts of your community. So you can do a sub-area plan. A sub-area amendment to a master plan is a lot simpler than an overall comprehensive review of the master plan. It's less time, there's less statutory requirements for publication, or not publication, but for comment from surrounding communities and that sort of thing. After we're done with all that, I'm gonna kind of turn it over to you guys. And I don't know if any of you have been involved, you probably all have, involved in a SWOT exercise, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I'd like to hear from, we're gonna go over each category. I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna be typing answers that I hear or thoughts and comments that you have. We're gonna start with the strengths of the corridor. Gonna try to go around the table. It doesn't have to be exactly around the table, but if you have something to say, I'm gonna type it in. We're gonna then talk about the weaknesses that you see in the corridor. Get all that information, opportunities, which is the most exciting part, and then some threats to the township that you might see with the corridor. So then we're gonna have all of this information together. We will produce a summary report with any findings that we see from this. We'll provide this to the Planning Commission, the Township Board, and then we'll determine next steps. And those next steps could be the development of a Jackson Road corridor plan, which we did a few years ago. Or it could be simply amend the ordinance, the Jackson Road Overlay District ordinance. So there's a couple different, but I would see those are probably the two most likely routes that would be taken. So that's kind of the process. That's what we're gonna try to do tonight. In the first part of this meeting, oh, by the way, I'm gonna try to keep this to 2 hours. I was thinking 9 o'clock, but since we really didn't get started till 7:30, it might be 9:30. So we'll try to keep this. 11. Not gonna be 11, so.
No, we're not going that long.
Yeah, when we do exercises like this that are kind of directed, we'll try to keep you guys going. So let's say 9:30, we'll try to be done tonight. That's really kind of what we're planning for tonight. Any thoughts, ideas? Where are we going? Okay, so the first thing I wanted to show you guys, and this is in the thing I handed out, and it's on the screen behind you. You might want to turn around and look at this because a lot of this is referring to the screen. I'm sorry that one's not working. I don't know why it's not working.
It works when you're not here.
No, it didn't. It stopped
Did it work?
working at a meeting earlier this
Oh,
week.
did it? Okay. What is apricot?
I have no idea.
Apricot Lane within Scio Farms. It's picking
Oh,
random street names
okay.
like Meddy's on there.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there must be something popped up with some names. I noticed that too, and I just thought, no one's gonna ask about that one. So
Sorry.
That's okay. But what this does, this is data that comes actually from SEMCOG. So it's not exact, so let's not pick apart every particular parcel. But this is the Jackson Road Overlay District. This red line is the Jackson Road sub-area that occurs within the current master plan. And these are all of, just to kind of give you a feel for what's out there. Of course, we're familiar with what's out there because you drive it every day, you're familiar with the community. But these are all of the existing land uses within Scio Township. So as you can see, there's an awful lot of land uses because we don't have a dominant color here. And red is commercial, so I guess that's sort of dominant. Then we have industrial is always like a gray color. A fair amount of industrial in Scio Township. Some multifamily, some single family. The Scio Farms is showing up as single family. So there's a fair amount of variation here within the Jackson Road corridor. So we start to talk about a mixed use district, and if you think about it, we already kind of have a mixed use district, right? I mean, there's a very eclectic mixture of uses along the Jackson Road corridor that range from high intensity commercial to single family residential to even vacant property that's zoned agriculture.
Except not mixed use, commercial residential.
We actually do have one that's mixed use commercial residential.
In here?
The Scio, this is existing. These categories are from SEMCOG, so I don't think they're that specific. But we have a current mixed use commercial residential project that's Scio Town Center on the east side of Jackson, south of just south of the car wash. It's a residential second, third floor, commercial on the first floor.
Oh, Woodland Farm?
No, it's called Scio Town Center.
Oh, yeah, the Scio condos over there.
Yeah, there's condos.
The sushi restaurant.
Yep.
That building
That's
across from
The
Arbor Chase.
consignment shop is there.
What's there?
The consignment shop?
Pawn shop.
We were going to that.
You know where Panera is.
Yeah, it's across.
Where?
Across the street.
Across the street.
It's got a little tower.
Oh,
The
okay.
Panera,
Yeah.
yeah.
OHM is there? Like a little clock tower, yeah, OHM is in that complex, they've got some office and retail but the feature on that particular project is there's
yeah.
retail on the first floor, there's condos in the second floor.
Z.
Yeah.
Okay.
Besides it. So we do have one example of that within the township now. So this is, again, just to kind of give you a little background, there's a lot going on here
Of
within.
course, Woodview Commons is being built as we speak,
Yes.
by Baker.
Yeah.
Yeah, a big multifamily and commercial in the front as well.
So notice there's quite a choke point in the Jackson Road overlay district. Right there around, it squeezes right there, I can't tell what that is, right before,
Oh, that's Luella, that's where Jillian lives.
yeah, that's her problem.
So when we developed the Jackson Road, the JROD, the Jackson Overlay District, we limited it to certain size parcels. And if you were under, I want to say 150 feet of frontage on Jackson Road of a certain acreage, you were not included. And these were all, this was a known residential subdivision. And some of the Jackson Road Overlay District has architectural standards and things like that that really lend themselves to a single family home. And so not only were they, they're excluded primarily due to lot size and frontage on Jackson. So if you have little lots on Jackson, there's a few other examples that are not in the district, but that's a notable one because that's a known single family area. And the Jackson Road Overlay District was supposed to address the existing larger lots and development that could occur on those lots, primarily vacant lots. Those are not vacant lots, they're all single family. And no one wanted to presume that, by including it in the Jackson Road Overlay District, there was some discussion at the time like that would somehow presume that a developer was going to buy up all those lots and tear the houses down and build something there. And we didn't want to make that assumption. Okay. So this is our current master plan. There's a couple things that are going on here and they're better drawings, but as you can see from the current Scio Township master plan, that the most intense development within the township is planned along the Jackson Road corridor. Primarily, as you head from Ann Arbor westward along the Jackson corridor, you go from composite commercial, which is the designation that allows auto dealerships, to mixed use commercial, which allows a kind of mixture of commercial stuff. And as you head up to basically Stabler Road, for the most part, except for the Baker Road interchange, it transferred to office industrial, kind of office, mixed use office industrial. The point of this is, one, the little dash red line that you might be able to see in your drawings is the sewer service district, which I got a better map coming up, so don't despair on that yet. But the little red dash line is the sewer service district. So as you can see, that is where we have concentrated our more intense development within the community. Outside of that area, for the most part, has remained relatively low density, large lot and or 1 acre type lot residential development. And this is not by mistake. This has been the plan for, as Donna was saying, it takes a long time for a plan to be realized. Well, this has been the plan of Scio Township for as long as I've been around. And the idea was to concentrate growth within the Jackson Road corridor while leaving the areas north of within the township and south of the corridor within the township to relatively low density residential or low density open space type uses. And I think the township has been very successful in that and has done a very good job. And I think the township's done a great job. Along with this was the LPC element that we didn't used to have years ago. So Land Preservation Commission became part of this. They began acquiring properties either through easements or outright purchase or I've got a map of that at the end also, or with leveraging monies through City of Ann Arbor and the county to purchase or tie up some of the more significant properties within the township. All of that kind of started with this idea of master planning. So I did a little on this subject, just real quick. I went back through my little library in my cubicle to look at some of our old planning documents, just to give everyone a feeling that, you know, Scio Township has a long history of planning activities and have been pretty successful in those planning activities up to this point. This is the first master plan I could find, 1981. Yeah, 1981. This might be the first master plan, which is kind of interesting.
Pirates or something.
Doug, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
1971, 72, is that the state mandated zoning requirement?
72 is our first zoning ordinance, roughly our first zoning ordinance, which I actually have a copy of here.
Okay.
It's not the, this isn't the 72 version, this is the 1982 version, but it's the 72 version amended. So roughly speaking, Scio Township's first zoning ordinance was 1972, and that's when a lot of communities adopted their first zoning ordinances. So there must be some, I don't know, that's a good question. There must be some correlation with the enabling legislation in the state of Michigan that allowed communities to have zoning ordinances. But a lot of communities adopted zoning in Michigan around this time. In fact, most of the communities I work in, their first zoning ordinance is roughly in the early 70s, 72, 73. So this is very interesting, nice historical document if you're ever interested in looking at how things have changed within the township. My first master plan I was involved with here was this one here, 1996. It was the first master plan I was involved with. I actually took these pictures. Walking around the township. We then we had two versions. We went from 96 to 2000 to 2003. So this encompasses several changes. I won't bore you with the pages, but if you look at the master plan map up here, there's an interesting development that occurred. In the early versions of the master plan, the thinking in Scio Township was we were going to have 3 commercial nodes, one at Wagner, one at Zeeb, one at Baker, and we were going to leave the middle parts for office industrial. And so there were some ideas that Jackson Road corridor should be more of a jobs creation kind of area where we would have high-end, office industrial type jobs. And the one I always try to think of as an example of that is the Tarumo site. That's a center that has very high paying, good jobs. And I think that was sort of the vision for Jackson Road corridor to be this high tech jobs corridor. As you go through these master plans, you can see that idea became less prevalent in the commercial, as you see in our current master plan, the commercial has moved from the Ann Arbor area up to Stabler Road. And so that has been a consistent change within the master plans, is that more commercial was developed. It's still the western part of the township, as you see, still has this kind of office industrial kind of feel. And then we have a 2009 version of the master plan, previous one, 2015. And now we have our 2021 version, which is up there on the screen. So all of these things change. We've had a few big changes on the plan over the years. And these changes occur when when things occur within a community that we didn't think of before, when there's new political leadership, new planning commissions, new ideas that we didn't either think of before or want to address before. And I think that's partly why we're here, to maybe address some of these new ideas that are new thinking that we have not addressed in the past. Some of the other plans, just so people might be interested in, we did a Baker Road corridor plan jointly with back then the Village of Dexter, that talked about some of the things that ended up in our last version of the master plan. We have I still use this to this day, a mapping inventory of natural and cultural features. That's a really good resource. And in 2006 was the last time we touched Jackson Road corridor as a corridor plan. So this was a plan we did in 2006, specifically for the Jackson Road corridor, kind of doing a process like we're doing here tonight, kind of kicking this off like we did tonight. This is the precursor to the JROD, to the Jackson Road Overlay District. A lot of the ideas and concepts that came out of this planning effort ended up in the zoning ordinance. And in the planning world, we say, you know, plan first, zone second. So if you have something in your zoning ordinance, it's supposed to be based on planning. So it's supposed to be something either in your master plan, sub-area plans, a plan like this. So plan first, zone second. That's exactly what we did. We planned with the corridor overlay guidelines, and then we zoned with the data. Kind of an interesting one. This harkens back.
Can I ask you a question, Doug?
Yeah.
Is that 2006 plan, was that what created our now Island Jackson Road?
No. The boulevard?
Yes.
The boulevard planning actually predates me. That began planning probably in the late 80s. And that was actually, I have the plan. I don't have it with me, but I actually have that Jackson Road Boulevard plan. And that was partly done by Scott Hedberg and Nancy Hedberg back when they were doing full-time landscape architecture. They were part of that. Nancy, of course, went on to become the township clerk for many years. But no, this was long after that. This was after that.
Okay.
And then we also have an open space and greenway plan that we did a number of years ago. Many of the concepts from this ended up in our ensuing master plans. So we've done a fair amount of planning within Scio Township over the years. And this is just another step along that path. And I'm pretty proud of the things we've done within the community over the time I've been here.
You didn't actually explain the one that's on top of the pile there. I think you got it.
Z-Road pathway.
Oh, sorry. This is the Z-Road pathway schematic design. Now, this is more of the precursor to the actual Z-Road pathway. This is not the engineering documents, but we were asked when we kind of knew we were going in that direction. We did a schematic plan. For the most part, it's been followed. You know, OHM has taken some of these concepts and engineered them. This is not the engineering plan. But this was, and the document that predated this was an effort that was spearheaded by the then Planning Commission chairperson, Allison R. Scott, who was a landscape architect, who I loved Allison. She was unfortunately, she passed away, but she was a great planning commissioner, had a lot of great ideas, and she really I will tell you that just my opinion, this is just I get to editorialize a little bit every once in a while. The pathway you see on Z-Road and some of the efforts that are going into pathways right now really began with Allison. She did a great job. So anyway, but the idea or the issue here is that, you know, doing this kind of planning is not new. We do a lot of it, and this is just another step along the path towards where we want this community to be in the future. Let's get a little more specific. So this is taken from the master plan. I wanted to again hit on the master plan first. These are taken from the master plan. Some of you may or may not remember, and I hope, as Kathleen Brandt mentioned, I hope everyone has read the master plan. I assume everyone has. These are the six. These are the 6 sub-areas of the Scio Township Master Plan. So we've been breaking down the township into sub-areas for a number of these versions of the master plan. And we kind of tried to break them down into areas that had something in common with one another. So you see the northeast quadrant, the southwest quadrant, the northeast quadrant, so we try to break it roughly into quadrants. And then we have the Jackson Road corridor, which is which obviously is a kind of has its own continuity to it. And so that's what we're really talking about today. It's the Jackson Road sub area. So this is a defined area within our current master plan. So we've already done a little thinking on this.
Man, City of Ann Arbor is just mislabeled a little bit.
Yeah.
That's the annexation area.
That'd be annexation.
Yeah,
But we don't know.
yeah, it didn't hit the gray area.
It won't be someday.
We're trying to forget.
I don't think so.
You're up in the Huron River sub area though, so I think you'd be good.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
take over the city of Ann Arbor.
So I think it's important, and you guys have your handout, so you don't have to look at the screen. But I think it's important to look at the development strategy. So within the master plan, there are development strategies for the Jackson Road, for the Jackson Road corridor. These are more specific. There are general development strategies for the master plan. Master plan generally. What I mean by that is we go back to this plan that's up on the screen right now. This is the overall future land use plan. And then you go to this plan. This kind of refines things and is talking about areas more specifically, where we have Jackson Road more specific. And each one of these sub areas, by the way, has its own set of design and kind of goals and policies. And so these are the kind of development strategies, specific development strategies for the Jackson Road corridor. So of course, some of these are ideas that have been passed along through other master plans. And we talk about retail uses, infill commercial development, office industrial. Number 2, support office. Foster the corporate high-tech jobs node. I think that's a discussion, as I mentioned, from a number of master plans ago, but that it's still valid to this day for some of the development we have out there. Highway commercial, we do have 2 freeway interchanges at Baker and Zeeb. We can't pretend we don't have those freeway interchanges. Encourage now, where we get a little different from our previous master plans as we get into number 6, when we start talking about encouraging high density residential and commercial uses as part of overall mixed use development proposals, which support office, industrial, research, and land use. That may have been in the previous master plan, but this is where we start to get into some new ideas in this master plan. I don't know what figure 3 is, so excuse me on that one. But in addition to those uses depicted in figure 3, the sub-area may consider multifamily residential when reviewed as part of an overall PUD proposal. I think this is a new development strategy. Multifamily use or mixed use or standalone shall be considered when sanitary sewer capacity is available in excess of that available in underlying planned and zoned property. So the Planning Commission had discussions about this. There was some discussion that we should be thinking about multifamily. That's kind of a newer thought along the Jackson corridor. If you look at the history of the master plans that I'm aware of. Promote public transportation, promote walkability, the establishment of linkages from the existing non-motorized pathways and others. The township protect natural features and consider developing form-based guidelines within the sub-area. So we have a description of a sub-area. We have some development strategies. In my opinion, we could run with this. This is, I said you always have to have that planning first, zone second. There's probably enough here for us to do a form-based code on the corridor, if that's what the community wanted, to do a lot of things. The master plan doesn't have to be exactly specific to what you want to do, but there have to be enough linkages between the zoning between the master plan and the zoning. Because what you don't want is to be in front of a judge and have a zoning standard or ordinance that has no relationship to anything else in your community. So if you say you have a zoning standard on, I don't know, you have a zoning standard that prohibits development of a certain kind or who knows what. And there's no talk of it anywhere except in your zoning ordinance. You run the risk of at least the people who are suing you trying to say that your zoning ordinance is arbitrary. They might use the word capricious, but that's more of an attorney term. So they would say your zoning ordinance is arbitrary. So you have to base your ordinances should be based on something. And that's a requirement in state law. And that something is a master plan. The state law, Public Act 110 says zoning is supposed to be based on a plan. So that plan is the master plan. So, I think we are in pretty good shape to begin work as long as what we come up with tonight and maybe in ensuing meetings doesn't diverge too far from this. If what we want to do diverges a lot from these existing strategies, then, you know, I might suggest that we do a master plan sub-area, if that's a direction.
Doug, if I may ask you a
Yep,
question.
yep.
So our master plan, and sometimes it's very broadly written.
Yes.
And it talks about multifamily, right, in the Jackson corridor area. But it also talks about a lot of other things. And when you say you think we have a good foundation in our master plan to start doing some of these things that we've been talking about in the planning commission, you have any concern about where the master plan says we want to develop more commercial along Jackson Road? Do you have any doubt in your mind or about going forward, or you think there's sufficient mentioning in the master plan about the residential piece?
I think there is, and I think particularly that number 11, when we talk about considering developing form-based code guidelines within the sub-area, that opens a big window for us. Form-based code, I'll get real broad for the board members, and we talked a little bit about this at the planning commission. You know, form-based code as opposed to a standard zoning code. Form-based code is more interested in the location of buildings and the form of buildings rather than the use. So you could have, it lends itself to mixed use. So it's kind of more like, think about an old-fashioned downtown where you've got a pharmacy and you've got a hotel and you've got an apartment and you've got a single family, you know, who knows, a duplex or who knows what, and then a commercial building. And they're very close together, they're relatively close to the road, promotes walkability, some of the other things we talk about. But form-based is more interested in the form of the development, where traditional zoning is more interested in the uses. So you have, like, for example, in zoning districts, you have a commercial zone. Thou shall not have anything other than those listed in the C1 or C2 zone can go in this location. You're not so much worried about that in a form-based code. You're talking more about what the building looks like, where it's located, how it functions with the neighboring properties, that sort of thing. So I think
So like in our zoning, we talk about commercial, C1, C2, R1, A1 and all that, and that's more focused on uses, agricultural, commercial, industrial.
Yes.
Versus this form-based.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. Now, the form-based, you can do a couple different things with form-based. You can do a form-based overlay where you just put a form-based on top of your existing zoning that allows a variety of uses within that district. Or you can just blow out your existing zoning and come up with a whole new district that just shows up in your zoning map as form-based. So either way, I mean, that's a lot of steps from now, even if that's the direction, who knows if that's the direction we want to take. When we did the Jackson Road overlay, the JROD overlay district, there are form-based elements, and we did that on purpose. The Jackson Road overlay is an overlay district. It has some of the hallmarks of a form-based code in that we have maximum setbacks instead of minimum setbacks. Buildings are only supposed to be located, they're not supposed to be located any further back than a certain point. We allow a lot of mixed uses within the Jackson Road overlay district. So there's a lot of form-based ideas that on purpose, we knew this. We didn't want to go full-on form-based back when we adopted the JROD, but we incorporated a number of those concepts that were never incorporated before. This idea of mixed use was never a thing before. The Jackson Road Overlay District has actually promoted quite a bit of development within the corridor that would not have occurred otherwise. Jackson Road corridor.
Are we coming back to talk about any of these things, or is now the time to talk about what's in this Jackson Road sub-area development strategies?
Why don't we come back to that? We're not really talking about these. I just wanted to show you what's in the current master plan. All right. And then if you want to get into, when we get to the SWOT exercise, if there's some issues that you want to bring up, we can. So this is the current zoning map, which most of us are familiar with. It's hard to see, but the Jackson Road Overlay District is actually on this map. It's like it's little pink. I won't even, it's along the Jackson Road, so just trust me, it's there.
Yeah, I blew it up and took a screenshot, so.
Yeah, if I blew this up, you'd be able to see it, but if I blow it up, then I'm probably gonna screw up this presentation. So, but as you can see from like our zoning map, there's a variety of zoning districts on the corridor. We have, C4 PUD, OS, I1, A1, I2, C2, OS, it's pretty much almost every zoning district that we have is contained within the Jackson Road corridor. Currently. So this is again, talking about background, this is a good map to see. This is shows two things here, shows the DDA boundary. Who's in the DDA? Ryan? So, no, are you on the DDA? Yeah. Both. Oh, you're on that. Okay.
I'm both.
So the black line is the DDA boundary line. The pink area bordered by the red dashed and dotted line is the township sanitary sewer service area.
Can you slow down? The black line is where?
The DDA. That's the DDA boundary. I think you're on the wrong. It's up on
This one.
We've moved on. So say it again, the black line is the DDA?
DDA, yep.
Okay.
And the red or the pink is the sanitary sewer service area. Of course, the DDA is the township's TIF district, so we have the ability to capture taxes within that district. I am no expert at TIFs, but the general idea is that the township can capture the increase in property value at a certain rate and use that money to invest within the district. So basically the community is getting their own tax money back to do things within the community.
And some from some other entities that might otherwise go out.
Yeah, and now, of course, what the DDA was set up for and what the TIF was used for up to this point is the boulevard. So
And water was first.
Water, okay. So utilities and the boulevard is what the TIF, what the DDA TIF has been used for historically. There is actually a final phase to the boulevard that was never constructed, but conceptually planned, and that's from Baker to Lima Township. I'm not sure if that'll ever happen. I don't know if you guys ever talked about that.
It's been talked about, but.
So that's, these are two interesting maps, particularly the sewer service area. And I'll say a few things about the sewer service area, because we'll probably talk about this when we get into the SWOT exercise to a certain degree. The sewer service area has been the township's most, I would say, in my opinion, the most significant growth management tool that we have and that we've ever had and probably will ever have.
In a good way or a bad way, or it just is what it is?
In a good way.
Good way.
I believe in a good way. Yeah, I believe in a good way. Because it has allowed those areas of the township that residents have desired to remain rural and open space, to remain rural and open space. It promotes development within an area that has sewer service and has allowed, it has allowed me as your community planner, when a developer comes to me and asks to do something outside of the sewer service district, it's an easy answer for me. You can't do it. I hear about, my interactions with developers, and it's true, I interact with developers every day here at the township. What doesn't get reported is is all of the development that never hits anybody's table because we tell them no. And that happens on a pretty regular basis, because if you're outside the sewer service district, if you're not zoned properly, now, I can't tell someone no, but I try to guide them to a certain degree so that they're not wasting their time and money. But of course, anybody, the other thing that I think people don't quite understand sometimes is that people have the right to fail. You know, people have the right to be denied. And so we get some proposals that I would never endorse or kind of scratch my head about myself. But people have the right to apply. They can pay their money, pay your money, take your chances. And that happens sometimes. And then it's up to the planning commission and township board to do what they have to do to either deny or approve those projects. But this sewer service district is a very effective growth development tool. It has allowed us to maintain growth in the area that we want growth. It's been enabled us to preserve open space where we want open space preserved. And the other interesting part of this that most of you know is that this is dictated by a contract between the City of Ann Arbor and Scio Township. So moving those lines is not easy. It's very difficult. It's my understanding that there has to be a joint agreement between the city and the township to move these lines. And Kathleen's nodding her head, so I think that's true. And that's not easy. That's no easy task to make that change. So that is why this always shows up in our master plan. That's why we show this and why it's such an important part of what we do here in the Scio Township. Now, does the sewer service district change occasionally to accommodate new growth? It has over time, not much, but it has occasionally, it changes.
Is that how I got out to Liberty?
Yes, yeah. The last contract that we negotiated with the City of Ann Arbor, we kind of squared off a few areas. What is now known as Scio View Development, which is Mark and Linda Smith's property. That was not in the sewer service district. And during the last negotiation with the City of Ann Arbor, that was added to the sewer service district. Part of what is now Woodview was not in the sewer service district previously. That is now within the sewer service district. So it does change occasionally, but it's not very often. And
were those sidebar agreements or subsequent agreements to add those? Were those recent additions?
Those were additions at the last contract negotiation. Okay.
So if we have a contract or for so many REUs, do we need their permission to expand the district?
I believe the district is both capacity and location.
Okay.
So it's both map and capacity. So yes, we would need their permission to do that.
And we've stuck to that, been really strong with it, because before we had a definite district line that you can see, we had people south of that who had large tract of lands they wanted to develop. We could get the sewer, and all of a sudden we realized we had a big open door way back when. So we definitively created, and it was already in that direction anyway with what had happened, but we specifically made the official line.
It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon in other communities for a developer to extend utilities when they don't have such a defined sewer service district like Scio Township has. In fact, it's very common for a developer to come to a township, say, hey, I will extend the sewer line. I'll pay for it. It's not on the township. And then they expand it and put in a very dense subdivision. That's not even a question at Scio Township. It just doesn't happen.
So that's where you get the urban sprawl.
That is where you certainly can get urban sprawl, yes.
Just look at west of Flint, when they put the sewer in going on the west side, not Flint, Saginaw.
Yeah.
Saginaw?
Well, not going to disparage any communities because they all do what they want to do themselves. But there's a community up actually near south of Flint. If someone listens to this, I'm not disparaging Grand Blanc Township. But Grand Blanc Township is a 36 square mile township, just like Scio. And they allow developers to expand utilities anywhere in the township. And that township has grown into pretty much a 36 square mile subdivision. And it's so that I don't think people sometimes appreciate how unique Scio is in this regard, and that we have the sewer service district that we hold to, partly because we have to hold to it. But it's always been my experience with township board members that I've worked with over the years that even if there wasn't a contract, there was no real desire to expand this district. I mean, Donna's been around for, longer than me actually. And I think that was.
I like the farms.
Yeah, that was.
Well, the technology is kind of pushing against it in the legislature with these community wastewater treatment plants. So I'm guessing it's gonna be harder to hold the line.
It's going to be harder to hold the line. I don't disagree because the technology is there and the cost is going down for these systems. That's why it's important to have a good master plan that you
That's
follow.
why it's important to have a good PUD state ordinance.
Well, we're gonna talk about that in a minute too, yeah.
Because we
So-
can control that
Yeah.
with these big developments.
Yeah, but it's good to have a good PUD or good master plan ordinance and PUD ordinance, so that when these requests come to you, you can, you have that as your backup.
Along those lines, you said that having the sewer service area was or is a good, effective tool. But I'm wondering, in light of what we've seen with Heritage Woods, would it be more correct to say it was an effective tool? Because I don't know, we'll talk about it at some point.
I don't think so, and I also disagree with the characterization that was against the master plan, because.
Well, I didn't say that.
Yeah, no, I'm just generally, that's a sub-area of the master plan that specifically calls for that. And so we followed our master plan and it does indicate that, we even talk about sewage treatment plant, there's packaged plants in the master plan for that. So because we were so specific in that location, that doesn't apply to the rest of the township. I don't think, and that there's no precedent set in my opinion. We followed our master plan on that particular parcel, as was vetted by the planning commission, approved by the planning commission. So I feel good about that.
I would just say that's a function of our PUD ordinance. That heritage.
Okay, I think I'm coming to the end here. Now, this is the same map, but this is the a little more specific. I spoke to Sally Boss this morning. She wanted me to include this because this is the actual official sewer service map, because not to have an incorrect one. And so, Sally, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Sally, you and I talked this morning about one of the things I wanted to give everyone before we get into our writing exercise. One of the things I wanted to give everyone an idea for, because sometimes we have this idea about REUs and what does that mean? And so I wanted to try to have Sally give you kind of a verbal picture of what a certain number of REUs looks like. And I don't know, Sally, did you make any headway on that?
I did. I know many of you have heard from either Matt Parks, myself, Ken Early, Stacy Monty. We've given this presentation to, I think, all of you except maybe the DDA at least once over the last couple of years. So an REU is equivalent to one single family home. Per the agreement with Ann Arbor, we use Ann Arbor Table A, so that is 300 gallons per day is approximately what a single family home uses. So I ran a couple of examples here. I just used the nice round number of 20 REUs. So that would be a small subdivision, 20 single family homes. When you compare that to some other common uses we see in the township, 20 REUs would be, like I said, 20 single family homes, Some are between 25 and 35 mid-size apartments, small to mid-size apartments. It would be a 40 to 80 room hotel, which is relatively small for a hotel. It'd be a 200 to 300 restaurant, 2 to 300 seat restaurant, depending on if it was fast food or sit down. So that's relatively large. It also would be equivalent to 100,000 square feet of non-medical office space or warehouse space, 200,000 square feet of retail space, or 150,000 square feet of general industrial. So we track these REUs via, we have a theoretical spreadsheet, but about every 5 to 10 years, we go and do sewer metering, where we actually put meters in the ground in 9 to 12 spots around the township. We get the actual flows, we calculate it, we calibrate it in our model, and we get what is left remaining in the contract. So we did that last in 2019, 2020. And as many of you have heard, we're right around that 1,200 REU remaining amount. And like I said, that's theoretical. You're coming due on another metering cycle here in the next 2 to 3 years, I would recommend. Because these numbers are conservative and there's things you can do like sewer manhole maintenance. You can line sewer pipes to keep out inflow and infiltration so you're not getting groundwater in your system. Those types of projects can also help you conserve capacity. So the metering is really important to true up your numbers to make sure you're still on track. Because theoretically, you could be out in however many years, but when you actually meter, you go back and you are using much less water than the conservative theoretical numbers indicate. And that's due to low flow toilets, low flow shower heads, just conservancy in our estimations.
Yeah, so I asked Sally to do that so that, because I know I was talking about REUs and I was trying to get a picture in my head. So you said 20, right? Sally, was it 20?
Correct.
So 20 REUs, again, 20 homes, 35 multifamily, you know, I think she said like 100,000 square foot retail, several 100,000 square foot industrial. And so you start to think about, okay, how much capacity do we have? What can we do within the corridor? How much does certain uses, you know, how many RUs do certain uses take? And I think it was important to important for me to kind of get that thought, you know, as in your head as we go.
So it'd be fair to say there's more REUs used in residential.
Yeah, well, it's
correct.
Yeah, 1 to 1. Yeah. So
Yep.
one RU for every home. And then multifamily is going to be you're going to get a little bit more bang for your buck on multifamily.
Slightly. However, if you're getting into the duplexes and the large apartments that are over 1,200 square feet, you're still 1 to 1. So large multifamily units, it's the smaller ones, you get a little more bang for your buck, but definitely residential is some of your heaviest use.
So Sally, with the testing that you're doing, what type of information are you getting to give us an idea of where we stand as far as the status? I mean, are we on track or what's the status based on the testing?
So the testing and our water reliability and sewer studies show that based on population, you will technically run out of REU sometime in the next 20 years. However, you're going to hit pump station capacity before you hit contract capacity because the pumps at the sewer pump station just won't be able to keep up with that much flow. You'll have to do improvements there before you actually do it. But there's no real on track. We get flow data from that testing. So you get a gallons per day or millions of gallons per day. And then we compare that to your contract rate that Ann Arbor allows. And then we can back calculate how many REUs you have remaining.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. So on this map that's up there, there are 3 different colors. One looks like kind of lighter green, darker green, and then brown. Does that mean they're different access points or different capacities or they tie in at different areas, maybe along Scio Church or maybe along Jackson and maybe along Miller or something? Why the different districts and colors?
Originally, the contract had separate capacities for each different color. They really indicate different connection points.
Okay.
And in the 2014 contract negotiations with Ann Arbor, it no longer matters which connection point is bringing in the flow. So it's just one overall between those three connection points. It's one overall flow.
Sally, did I kind of characterize our contract in very broad sense to the group here?
Yes, yes. I agree with your representation of it.
All right, thank you. So anyway, a very important item. This is a map that doesn't necessarily have to do with the Jackson Road corridor, but it's a good one to kind of remind ourselves, because sometimes, when we're talking about the Jackson Road corridor and pathways and the zebra pathway and how that connects to Jackson Road, we start to look at public and private preserves and areas that people might want to go to. And so this is a map that we did in 2020. We keep this map for the township of all of the parks, preserves, and community facilities, all the open space. Much of this is land that's been acquired through the Land Preservation Committee's work over the years.
It actually matches with that plan that you referenced just at the end of when you were holding up the plans. The
Greenway?
Yeah, that one.
Open space Greenway.
The open space, because that's refers to the different bioreserves.
Yeah.
And if you match it up with this, a lot of the preserved properties sort of form kind of like a template right over that.
Yeah. So I think that's our last, that's our last one. So that's kind of the background of what we're talking about. Any broad questions on the background? And I'd like to take about 5 minutes, a little 5-minute break here, and then we'll get into it for about the next 45 minutes or so with our SWOT exercise. But I gotta switch screens, and I'm not exactly sure how to do that.
Quick break.
That's okay, sorry.
So
No, that's
5-minute break.
Yeah, or less, whenever he gets it back up on the screen.
Oh, yeah, I talked to Emily, she's a municipal attorney, Emily, you know Emily?
Yes, she worked, she was before my time.
Yeah, so I know her from, she's a attorney.
What is that?
Just came up with a successful,
Scanned it.
So we're done, right?
Yeah, we're done. We're gonna fill those spots, hold on. At about 4:10, downpour, 4:30 and 4:40 is through the peak time. There's absolute downpour.
Yeah, we were supporting transit.
Good idea.
Affordable housing, the density.
Don't need a bad chair to make it worse.
Alrighty, here we go.
These were like 15 weeks old.
All right, coming back, everybody? All right, go ahead, Doug.
Okay, so I think we're all back here now.
I also talked.
All right, so now is the class participation part. You will be graded. You'll be graded on how the Jackson Road corridor grows in the next 15 years.
Our grades will be handed to us in 20 years.
20 years.
Yep. So, with everything that everything that we've talked about.
Okay, are we ready?
Okay, with everything that we've heard and talked about up until this point, about the first hour of the presentation, background, zoning, all that sort of thing. Is there anything I missed, Jen? Is there anything
I think the only other thing is, our climate resolution. And when we think about growth, development, et cetera, how do we actually look at that in a way that we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions and not continue to increase our greenhouse greenhouse gas emissions. So that would be the only addition.
So, with all of that in mind, and what you've seen and even like the size of the corridor, I mean, we're talking about roughly a 6 mile long stretch of road. You know, a little bit, not quite 6 because Ann Arbor takes up part of it. Because technically the border of Scio Township goes in most cases on Maple, but you know, at where the Jackson Road hits roughly Wagner, because the Ford dealership actually, for those of you that complain about the Ford dealership, because occasionally I get complaints about the Ford dealership, it's in the city of Ann Arbor.
Wagner.
Yep, with their flags and their lights and
That's
their.
one less dealership in our township.
Occasionally I get complaints about the Ford dealership and I happily tell them it's in the city of Ann Arbor. But that is, you know, that's, I don't want to tip my hat on maybe some weaknesses, but we can go around the horn, or if you guys just want to just raise, make as informal as possible. But I want to get through strengths of the corridor. Those are things that you think are good, happening well, the things that have either developed well, that are good, that you see help Scio Township as a community. Then we're going to get into the weaknesses, kind of the opposite of that. What is wrong with the corridor? What might maybe is a deficiency that has maybe been created. And I'm not just talking about the boulevard. I'm talking about how the corridor has developed and the land uses that we find within the corridor. And then opportunities. It's too bad that the acronym wasn't different, but it's not cute if it was SWTO, but it's SWAT, because opportunity should probably be the last thing we talk about. But then we're going to talk about opportunities, and that's kind of the fun part. It's all interesting. As a planner, I guess it's all sort of fun in a way, but opportunities is where we get, I want to hear, we have this corridor, we have this, we're next to the city of Ann Arbor, between the city of Ann Arbor and the city of Dexter, and what do we have that really makes this township and this place special? What could happen here to make it more special? And then, what kind of threats do we have? What do we see as potential problems, things that could be problematic to the township into the future? Again, not tipping my hat. This is really up to you guys. I'm not going to be participating in this part of the presentation. But, Sally mentioned that the potential ending of sewer capacity. That's definitely a threat along the corridor. Things like that. So why don't we start with the Jackson Road corridor strengths? And if you want, we can go right along the room. And if you don't have anything to contribute, just pass. Why don't we do that?
So can I say something for a second here about our process? It is it's 20 to 9. We're gonna be at 9:30. And people have been sitting around this table, particularly those who've been involved in these discussions. And I kind of wonder if you think it's a good idea to have people talk about various aspects of a change in the corridor that they're thinking about. I'd be interested to hear from the BOT, for instance. I know we've had kind of dialogue in the Planning Commission. I'd be interested in hearing from the DDA what their perspective is. But if you think all that's gonna flush out in the SWOT exercise, I'm all for it, but I wanna make sure I get some knowledge about what other governmental units are thinking about tonight, because.
Do you want to do it in order? Or do you want each person to sort of say, here's some strengths and here's some weaknesses?
We're gonna do strengths first.
Okay.
And then weaknesses.
Okay.
There's a process.
Each letter.
And I think what you're talking about will come out.
Okay.
And if it doesn't, we can add other at the end.
But if we're gonna get all the way around,
Get to some meat.
it should be succinct.
I think this is a concise way to get to what you're, so it doesn't just end up being a free-flowing stream of consciousness kind of discussion.
All right.
Mr. Reiser.
Infrastructure, sewer, water, bus, freeway.
Want more freeway?
No, he's
saying
saying
strengths.
infrastructure, it's got
Strengths.
the strength is you got access to the freeway, access to the bus, access to sewer, access to water, and you can drive 75 miles an hour if you're going slow. I'm only kidding.
No, it's true.
Focus on the strengths first.
Strength can also be a weakness.
Get out of Scio.
I will say that I'm doing this, it's up on the board and the resident, and there's only.
And bus, and bus.
And bus, there's only a few people
You can
online,
take public transit.
but this is, I usually do this with a flip chart. I think this is gonna be a lot easier.
So the Jackson Road development, the way it was planned, the median, the grassy areas on the boulevard, I think that adds a lot.
Jeff?
Well, I was gonna say the bus, I'll say the sidewalks. I also question if bus service is infrastructure.
So bus, sidewalk. Okay. Yeah.
It's safe to drive. I remember the 2-lane Jackson Road.
Absolutely.
And now it's 2 lanes, 2 ways, and it's safe.
Joyce, do you want to?
It's pretty concentrated, which I think is a plus. It's an opportunity. Density.
I think one of the things that I learned is that Scio Township's done a good job of having a mix of different kinds of uses. And that that's a strength, that diversity of different kinds of commercial and business. I agree with the sidewalks. I think it really made a big difference recently when the city of Ann Arbor finally connected to the Jackson Road sidewalk. There was a big gap there, and just within the last couple of years, they extended it out. So now there actually is a contiguous pedestrian path to the city of Ann Arbor along Jackson.
So connectivity to the city.
Yeah, connectivity to the city. I think, there's other places where we could do that in Scio Township, but we have it along the Jackson corridor, so that's a strength of that particular corridor.
Sorry, don't mind.
Oh, Kathy.
And sustainability, bus, sidewalks, and the fact that it's concentrated enough that we can retain open space, agricultural land. Agricultural land on Jackson Road? No, because of Jackson Road, we are able to. Bike paths, sort of. Bike lanes on the side of Jackson Road.
Sort of. I think sort of bike lanes, yeah.
Gutsy move, right?
For the brave.
We have an optimist here, I like that.
This is our guy that broke his back on a bike,
I think I would go similar to Mr. Reiser. Infrastructure as far as being able to transit the corridor, whether by car, by bike, by bus, really makes it easier for people to access all of the mix of uses that are there.
I'm gonna pass.
I don't have anything new to add.
Right.
I'm gonna take a different twist. And I think one of our strengths is that people wanna live here. And that affords us an opportunity to do some things. And but I would say that we're quickly running out of large parcels to be able to do some of the residential stuff. And so I'll leave it at that for now.
Being last is kind of tough because you went through everything in my checklist in my head, but Maybe, I think it's been great that Mr. Lalonde and probably Carla Wortman and all of the master plans that have been done for Jackson Road, whether it was the JROD, the corridor, that has been thoughtfully planned for the past, 40 years. So at least it's been under consideration, and we're here talking at the table. So, I think we know it's kind of the heartbeat and the spine of Scio Township.
Yeah. I would add one more thing. I don't think there are a lot of commercial districts that even have very many natural features. And Jackson Road corridor does have a few areas that are still, that retain some of those natural features.
The vacant parcels?
Yeah, the
vacant industrial parcels.
The vacant industrial parcels. But we do have some wetland areas. We do have some wetland areas.
In front of Lowe's, in between Lowe's, when you go back there.
Right, back in the, some of the creek areas that run through.
Behind Toyota.
Yeah.
There's some wetlands behind
Maybe
Toyota.
that points to how we should think about those little scraps of land that the township controls along the corridor.
Everybody heard, before we move on to weakness, does anybody have any additions?
One other comment, our Jackson Road is not an 8 mile, which is improving over the decades, but it used to be just boom, 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 no planning, no nothing. It was a disaster. Major thoroughfare, so you're doing a good job.
Would you agree that it's a 6 mile?
6 mile, I don't go on that one very often.
Medical marijuana, or we don't have marijuana dispensaries, that's a plus.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add that. Why not?
Jillian,
Not an 8
that
mile.
were rare.
No.
Well, I know of one, but I'm not
Oh,
gonna.
no dispensaries?
Yeah, no
You
dispensaries.
go to Ann Arbor, they have 25.
28.
No, is that
Yeah,
number?
right, John?
They
We have
probably
some we have some
20.
within walking distance of Jackson Road, however, our Jackson Road.
Oh, really, Jan? Where are those?
We just have the growers.
They use more energy.
Okay,
You guys know a lot more about this than I do.
There's a whole subculture here.
now, Jan, do you want to, we only have a couple of people online.
Yes, all right.
Isn't that what Pittsfield, is that what we?
It was one of the ones that we did.
Opportunities? Yeah, that'd be more of an opportunity, I think.
Yeah.
Rob, bring that up in a couple minutes.
Put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get on to weaknesses. So everyone be kind. Let me start talking about weaknesses. John.
It's not pedestrian friendly through the lack of crossings as well as how spread out some of the uses are. If you want to walk from Carlisle to
The session room.
Session room, hell, you gotta play Frogger. If you wanna walk to IHA, it's not as dense as it could be in pedestrian friendly.
Safe crossings.
Oh, yeah, safe.
You gonna put that in?
Thanks, Rob. I was gonna say that, Rob got it.
A weakness is the potential for piecemeal development. The example I'm gonna use is recent ZBA issue that we dealt with where a hotel was requesting a variance for 4 stories. It was denied and they are now pursuing a PUD. But the limit was 2 stories. And if the ZBA had granted that variance, it would have been, in our opinion, piecemeal development.
but no cohesive development theme or.
Right.
It's too wide, it's difficult to cross, that's a big cause of the speeding. The roads are far too wide for 45 miles an hour. I don't think it should be 45 either.
45.
In fact, if you look at it on Google Maps, right there in front of the old cinema place, the width of Jackson Road from sidewalk to sidewalk is wider than 94 where Wagner crosses. It's pretty darn big. There's no trees. That makes it very unpleasant to walk on, especially when it's hot outside. You don't have any shade. Speaking of being unpleasant to walk on, it's loud. It's because of all those cars. Like, try to have a conversation with somebody walking on the sidewalk. You gotta yell. It's very unpleasant. I don't like being out
And
there.
94 doesn't help either.
What's that?
94 doesn't help either.
Yeah, but it's definitely the cars right beside you that make it so loud. 94 is like a hum off in the distance. It's definitely annoying, but right there on Jackson, it's very loud. There's no dedicated bike paths. Sorry, I know that we have striped a gutter down there, but that's a death wish. We need something safe for bicycles. Also the car dealerships, a sea of parking that's along Jackson Road, and also the lacks of parks and playgrounds. Also too many drive-throughs.
Put that down.
It is automobile oriented.
Yeah, past a car dealership, several car dealerships, a tire store, a drive-through bank on my way here on the sidewalk.
Have you ever been hit, Jeff?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever been hit?
No, I haven't.
Great.
No, but every time I get on Zeev on the way here, it's inevitable that either that light or at McDonald's, somebody's not gonna be looking for me and I'm gonna come right in front of me.
Wear bright colors, please. So when you did your presentation, Doug, you had mentioned that we have not done a lot as far as technology in the corridor and also the residential, whether it's lodging or mixed-use residential. And then the other thing is just in reference to making it more compatible with families as far as social and recreation that would support the restaurants and other types of activities in the district.
Yes. We lost our theater, our bowling alley.
Yeah. Yeah, both were really popular.
Well, I think in some ways there's some strengths and weaknesses in some things. The sidewalks, I think it's great, and it was probably a huge step for Scio Township to think of sidewalks on both sides of Jackson all the way out. So I appreciate that, but they're only 5 feet wide. And that's not really enough to encourage the kind of use by cyclists and pedestrians and to really make it welcoming. I agree that we need crosswalks, safe ways for people to get across. I mean, that's another strength weakness thing because I think it was prescient of the board back in 1980s to have the vision of the boulevard. But I've learned that boulevards actually increase automobile speeds and make it less sort of welcoming for pedestrians. So something that was a big plus for automobile traffic is actually a downside for pedestrians. It's great that we have bus service, but it stops halfway out the corridor. I mean, I know Wave sort of extends the service, but AATA only goes all the way to Meyer, and then that's the end of it. So there's lots of things.
But we have Wave, part of our millage pays for Wave.
Well, that's what I'm
to pick up
saying.
People to connect, admire, to take people in.
I think that's great, but I think ideally we'd like AATA to extend service and have that go a little farther. But anyway, that's enough for
You might want to save it, so.
I guess one more weakness is the lack of residential close to Jackson, although we do have a development that's about to put a bunch of residential right on Jackson.
What was the last one? Sorry.
The lack of residential right on Jackson. I think, my view is probably the best place to put it is on the south side of Jackson, for the most part.
Okay, I agree particularly with Jeff and with Will. And I also want to emphasize for people to, we're so car oriented that for people to get anywhere otherwise, let's say you want to take a bus to get to work in Ann Arbor, downtown Ann Arbor or something. You have to worry about the bus schedules and get there. It's difficult to, let's say you live a mile and a half away, you might want to ride your bike to the bus stop. Where do you park your bike? How do you get your bike to that bus stop? I keep seeing a bike that's been lacked up to a sign in front of a bus, kind of hanging halfway up the zebra road every couple of days. I think we need to link those things up, and also people walking to get to the bus, hard to cross Jackson, we need some crosswalks. So I see, we just have to link all those different ways of getting around so that they're safe and pleasant. Easy to do. Oh, and the two bus services don't particularly link with each other in terms of, you can't call up and say, you know, the two information systems are totally different. And if there's any way they could kind of link up with themselves, and so you could buy one ticket and transfer or something, it would be very helpful.
You hit a couple things that are on my mind: connectivity, getting people from their neighborhood, from their subdivision to Jackson, where they can take advantage of many of the amenities that we highlighted in the strengths. It's just too hard to do. It's dangerous, whether it's bike or walking. And then the other one is we need better crosswalks, and we need covered bus stops.
We just got a
We have
couple
some
of stops.
Five.
all up and down.
No, they're not all.
Well, they're not all covered?
We have 5, that's what we've got.
Oh, you mean more,
Yeah.
more bus?
Not including the one that pre-existed at Meyer.
Right.
So a couple of things, utilities are our weakness. Our water and sewer utilities, at least in the area of part of Jackson Road, were not located where people thought they were. Just a problem. The electric infrastructure is poorly maintained, poorly planned, and poorly operated all along the corridor, as I'm sure we're all aware of. And to point out a DDA point of that, we have money technically in our plan to bury electric lines. They've budgeted somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 a year, depending on the year. Unfortunately, that doesn't really get you very far, as DTE's cost per mile is roughly, depending on what voltage it is, $500,000. Entertainment uses are very minimal as of today. It's difficult to use turnarounds at some points, especially during the peak uses of all of our vehicles in a day. One other thing that DDA's talked about, that other people have touched on, just to give you guys information, is bus service and crosswalks. There is, I know, specifically interested in doing some additional crosswalks. I don't know what that looks like, but it's something I've talked to other people in the DDA about, so there's some interest there. Bus service, I actually was fortunate enough to talk to the former PR public relations person for AATA. She's now retired, but she gave me some really good people to talk to about how to spearhead getting additional bus service and trying to connect further down Jackson Road. I don't know if the DDA will spearhead that, but at least we have somewhere to go and some people to talk to. Yeah, sorry.
That was great. Trying to keep up writing down, but I think Doug, you captured a lot so far. I hate Jackson Road. I think it's ugly. I avoid it at all costs. I don't mind the traffic. I like to drive, but I go other ways. I like my neighborhood, even though it's off Jackson Road. It reminds me of up north. I've lived in 26 different communities. Livonia, Flint, Garden City, Westland, Milan, Plymouth, Canton, I can name, and the ones that were my favorite were the ones that had quaint little downtowns. Even Ann Arbor, you know, they've got that. We don't have that. Milan had the little old fashioned downtown. Dexter, I love to go to Dexter. It's that, you know, that the character. We're missing trees, and I know the medians, they have poor soil, so it's hard to, and there's no water out there. It's hard, it's not impossible. We have burnt out buildings still. Pizza Hut is one of them. We have properties the further, and I wish we could expand all the way to Parker. But there's properties down there that, you know, as soon as you cross from Lima Township over, then you're like, oh, here's this part of Scio that is just run down. Now, there's some cute houses, I don't, you know, the little houses, but yeah, it's just the character is, and a lot of this, I will never walk on Jackson Road. I don't care how dense it is. It's just too busy, too much for me. Now, I'm talking personally, this is, you know, I understand about other people's lifestyles, but I would like to see it as, you know, let's bring beauty. I mean, the rest of Scio is gorgeous. I mean, is that that's her secret, is to, you know, they come into Jackson Road, it's like, oh, it's ugly here, we're not gonna move here, but, you know, why not, you know, have it.
Problem.
What was that?
I don't think we have that problem, people not wanting to move here.
Well, if it's, yeah, affordability is another thing, but, you know, anyway, I would like to see something done with Jackson so it is better looking, nicer. And, you know, a lot of these ideas of having density, what was it? Yeah, you know, in Pittsfield Township where they built off of Oak Valley. So there's some, and I was looking, they're more modern, but it's still that same concept of
Downtown-y, kind of downtown-like?
Yeah, kind of downtown-y. And I think, I mean, isn't that our Jackson Road supposed to be our downtown?
And we can create pockets along Jackson Road.
Yeah, and there's parcels that could be cleaned up. I mean, the American Brooch sat there for how long? Yeah, so.
The frontage of Myers are faux Main Street.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that one's set back.
Oh,
Jan.
Have you noticed that little corner at the corner of Zeeb and Jackson? It looks ugly. The weeds are growing up in the pavers. They don't
It's not well maintained.
landscape it.
Where's that?
At right there on the Meyer property at the corner
At the
of Jackson and
Oh,
Zeeb.
yeah, and the trash, that's another thing you need to make sure everybody, CVS has a ton of trash in there. They need to be held accountable and say, clean up your own property. But just along Jackson Road. Yeah, I think, wasn't there a group last year that got together and went out and cleaned up Jackson Road with the trash? Remember that?
DDA does.
It's annual.
Is it annual? Yeah.
Weaknesses on Jackson Road to me are that we don't have a clear strategy between north and south. It's as if anything can happen on either side, which I think then leads to an opportunity that if you have no strategy, then you're always trying to figure out how to get across. An opportunity could be that you focus the walkable things on the south side, and clearly find areas so that there's an attraction where people can come. And if they had to drive there, but to get to a parking lot, to then go to a restaurant, go to a store. I think there's some spots on Jackson that could be focused to make it more homey. But I think you can't have a strategy that says it can go on either north or south. It needs to be defined one or the other.
I have a little bit of different take. I think one of the weaknesses, has been our view of the Jackson Road. I think it's been viewed as commercial. And I think the creation of our millage is an implement of that. Like, we just go up and down Jackson Road. We don't pick up any of our seniors off Jackson Road. We bring them onto the Jackson Road. We don't. So the way we've created our transportation plan so far is that that's a commercial corridor. We want to bring people in to work at the businesses we have, and we want to, people that live along Jackson Road, primarily Scio Farms. We want to bring them, get them to, to work. So I think a vision, and that's what we're here about, we're starting to talk about it, but I think that has held us back. We've had this issue of multifamily use in this corridor, and yet we've not done anything about it because our vision has always been focused on commercial. So I'm really glad to hear about all these ideas that people are talking about. I think it's great. And I'm really glad we had this meeting tonight because I'm hearing a lot of stuff from a lot of stakeholders that make a lot of sense on how we change the corridor. Trees, and walkways, et cetera, et cetera. And I do agree, I think, because it's such a long stretch, it's not a downtown city, it's not a downtown Dexter, it's not a downtown Chelsea, but we could create pockets along the Jackson corridor that create more foot traffic, more interest in our residents to go to Jackson Road to do things. I, for one, I miss the theater. I question that developer. I say you can't I can't find another theater owner to go in there. So that may be a function of the industry with COVID. I mean, movies took a hit, theaters took a hit. So I got to drive all the way to the rave or go to the Chelsea one or the Celine theater, or I could go downtown too, but downtown Ann Arbor. But I think that's real key too. You have to have a reason to go out except for buying a car or getting your car serviced. I mean, we got some good starts with some restaurants. And I think another weakness is the kind of restaurants we're bringing in. We don't need more fast food. I'm not against fast food. If people want to eat fast food, okay, but we need some that people want to come and park and be communal, like the Carlisle, like the Session. We need more of that where people come out to be communal with each other and their families and their friends and stuff, so.
One more thing I just want to add, we only have Meyer or Bush's. I mean, Bush's, that's not on Jackson Road, but I would like to see more grocery type, I guess. I don't know what I guess it would be retail, but yeah.
Lack of diverse grocery.
Yes.
Options or something like
You need a food hub, like the one up on Whitmore Lake.
Oh.
Or there's
yeah.
there's this really cool marketplace in Philadelphia. And they have it kind of reminds me of the Easter market. There was a butcher, there was
Like a Carytown?
yeah, there was
South Philly,
the
9th Street.
veggies, there was the wine, there was this. That would be great, a great place on Jackson Road. So.
Okay, yeah.
Chris?
You wanna-
I think I-94 is a weakness that unfortunately that's our northern boundary to the JROD district. So, I've heard a couple of times that, residential doesn't want to go there because between, Jackson Road and I-94 and the noise, although I will tell you, I promote high density in those areas in a heartbeat, extra installation, how we can design it. I think the way it's probably been designed, the weaknesses, I hate seeing all the parking lots that are in front, the dealerships. You say there's no trees along, Jackson Road corridor. It's because they want to look at, the dealerships want you to look at the cars. They're not going to do anything to screen. They put the buildings set back way too far. I'm hoping that as we go through this, we're going to start getting the buildings closer to the road. Zero step back is fine by me, to de-emphasize the vehicles and the parking. And everything, I could probably reiterate everything that's been up there I've gone to the dealerships, I've taken the bus downtown where the bus stops are located, walking through the snow and getting completely, your shoes wet. It's dangerous walking across Jackson Road to get to the other side to take the bus downtown Ann Arbor. The locations without crosswalks, so they're poorly located. It's unsafe, but I'm not gonna reiterate that, so I agree with everything that's out there.
Chris, you're right, I-94 is like a moat. In terms of all of the township to the north, because there's really no good way to get across. There's really only the Z-Road overpass that has any kind of pedestrian infrastructure in terms of sidewalk, and even that, you feel like you're taking your life in your hands, and MDOT just told us we can't change it.
Bridge breaks down.
Bob, can you talk, Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, sorry,
We should have looped you in.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
That's all right. I only had one thing I wanted to add to this particular item, weaknesses. It's sort of a weakness opportunity, but I'll try to, aim it toward weakness. All these ideas that you guys are mentioning are very good ones. But the weakness I'd like to point out is the inability to tie the different elements together to make it walkable. Put the stores right next to the residents. Right now they could go in anywhere without being connected. And if we group them, which I know we can, that's the opportunity part, with the form-based coding, we can say this type of use, these uses in this area are permitted, and these uses are permitted over here. So we can group our uses appropriately. But that's the opportunity end of it. The weakness is we can't do that right now. We don't do that. Does that make sense?
I also like to say it's predominantly one story. And you have, the proportion is very, very wide, and then you've got these little buildings. So it feels, yeah. Also, I think, even though it's a barrier, we have two barriers that are parallel to each other. So you have the density of the larger density of the township is to the south. And you have the barrier of Jackson Road to pedestrians and different types of transit. And then you have the barrier of 94. And then you have one of our biggest assets, the river. And so we have a dual kind of barrier issue.
Great. That was a long list. That was a long list.
Are we ready for O?
Yeah, it's long as it.
Let's talk about opportunities. Hold on. And go ahead, Jen.
I think Rob, maybe that was a phone. Opportunities is just the opportunity to take a fresh look, I guess, to build pockets of desired development, like mixed use pockets that resemble downtowns. There's an opportunity for that. Kind of like Pittsfield did along the Oak Valley. They've got residential upstairs, and they've got various restaurants and offices and barber shops and Starbucks and things on the first floor, so people can kind of live and walk to where they need to be. So just the opportunity for a new vision for the corridor, in certain areas.
I see opportunities in having discussions just like this one, bringing together diverse groups and talking. There are opportunities for the potential to plan in the future. So I guess I'm thinking this will be a learning experience for many of us, and there will be an opportunity to
utilize some of what we heard here tonight, better planning.
I think we have a lot of opportunities on Jackson Road. I think one of the things that Mr. Pattinson had pointed out earlier, which I planned to bring up tonight, was that we need parks. And I think we have an opportunity to at least envision that there being parks on Jackson Roads, pleasant public spaces. I think we have an opportunity for denser residential on Jackson Road. There's clearly a big demand for housing in Ann Arbor, not able to meet housing demands there. And I think that if we focus on denser residential on Jackson, it'll support a lot of these goals that we've already discussed, such as being able to walk around. I mean, people do go up walking just for fun and for exercise. It happens all the time. I'm not saying but you can encourage a lot more walking if you had a destination to go to, right? And those businesses that are destinations to walk to are not going to appear if there's no customers for it. Or if they're forced to have a sea of parking, but we told them they can't have a sea of parking. So I think denser residential, I think we have an opportunity to add bike infrastructure. We have quite a large right of way that I think that we could do more to encourage alternative means of transportation. I can't read my note. We have the opportunity to envision a proper downtown area, and I hope that that's something that we're all working towards. Is actually in 20 years, maybe we do have a cute little downtown area, and someone goes, "Oh, let's go to Scio. Look how cute it is," and walk around where currently there are car dealerships. We have the opportunity to reimagine office spaces. I think that the whole nation is realizing that office space is a lot less useful than it was just 4 years ago. And so I think that we can reimagine what we had originally planned as offices for something else, perhaps denser residential. I think we have the opportunity to improve on what Pittsfield is doing with zone-based sorry, not their zone base, their
Form-based.
Form-based, thank you. I've visited those places, you know, they've got a development right, I don't know the direction, the cardinal direction, but it's on the opposite side from Meyer and Target. Is kind of catty corner there. I don't know what you call it. I don't know which direction. Oak Valley is what we call it. So they've got a nice facade right up front. They've got a huge amount of parking in the back, and those businesses, their front doors are all on the parking side. So I think that, you know, we could hopefully learn from that and maybe get some of those front doors actually unlocked and people walking in. Encourage and support missing. Well, I didn't finish that thought, so that's all.
I don't think there's anything left.
There's always something. We can
Well, right now, I can't think of it quickly.
So I think there's an opportunity again for family and entertainment. And then just in terms of being more supportive of residents in the area, maybe a commuter lot that's aesthetically pleasant looking. I know there's a lot of vehicles because of the car dealership, but I don't believe there is one in the township.
Is Meyer not a commuter lot?
Well, it used to be Meyer offered that, but then they built out their outlots.
I didn't realize that had changed.
There's one on right next to the truck stop, Pilot and 94.
Oh, yes.
Big little small lot there. It's kind of not well lit.
Is that actually connected to public transit? Sorry for the detour.
Not what you want,
Is
usually.
that actually served by public transit? I couldn't figure out what that.
Or is it just
property is.
a park and, you know, having somebody else's?
I'm not
Park and
sure.
van
I
ride
think there's
location.
been van ride users that park there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's stick with each per Joyce.
Oh, that was it.
So opportunities, I agree. I think we have an opportunity to do more with non-motorized transportation pathways. I mean, I think the Zebra Road pathway, once we connect to the border trail, will be really interesting to see what kind of a dynamic occurs, because there's a lot of use of the border trail, and I think creating that kind of nexus is interesting to see what impact it will have, even given the unwelcoming nature of the Zebra overpass. But I think you're right. We could do a lot to improve the existing pedestrian cycling infrastructure along Jackson, and make that maybe just as attractive in its own way as the border trail at the other end of the Zebra Road path. I'd like to find a way to get people safely across the other overpasses at Wagner and Baker. Those are actually in some ways tougher than the Zebra Road pass. I like the idea of finding a way to create some public open space along dedicated public open space as opposed to just accidental open space. And then I think we could have some, pocket parks. I like Rob's thought that he shared at the beginning in terms of creating places for families. I think, in some ways, you could sort of find a synergy between some of these restaurants that people go to and get their food and then leave. If there were attractive places to go with your kids, where the kids could play for a little while and parents could sit and finish whatever their sandwich or whatever, I think that real plus. Maybe we could even figure out a way to provide Wi-Fi or something at some of the parks. Anyway, I think I like the idea of trying to reinvent a more welcoming pedestrian experience along the Jackson corridor.
I like the idea of the, maybe rather than thinking there's one big downtown, the little clustered areas where people are close to one another and close to all their needs. There's housing, there's the shopping that they need, and they can walk everywhere they need. Picturing even maybe little roads, access roads going off Jackson, so they're facing that towards one another and walkable rather than facing right onto the busy Jackson. But that, and then also the possibility of having a much more comprehensive transit system that's running later hours, so that people don't have to own cars, because it's getting so expensive, and because that's not very affordable in an aging population in Scio Township, that this could get more younger, less affluent people in our community. Just think it would be good.
So I think this is parks and preserves are one of our greatest strengths. We really haven't talked about that, but I think finding ways to make it easy for people to connect, come to Jackson, go with their family, and then they take a walk and go to one of these wonderful parks. I think this is the jewel in the township. And we need to make this more accessible to the main drag.
So probably, after I was thinking through a couple of things that everyone else has said, two big things come to mind. One of them is redevelopment. I mean, when you really look at Jackson Road as it is now, there's minimal land that is left over that's still developable from scratch. It's never had anything done to it. There is going to be businesses and plots that businesses turn over, and there's just a new use that comes up for that. I mean, one of the best examples of that probably is the theater. One of the things I've talked to several people in the community about is if you could turn that into dense housing and do some other people said here, where you have some of those basic needs met with a smaller grocery unit, maybe, a nail salon or a hair care thing, having some of those in the base and doing 1/4, 1/5 construction, where it's masonry and base, and having something as aesthetic And then I almost think of having like a opening or a clearing where it's like a town square or like top of the park where there's grass that could be planted and people could gather as a park. That's something that could really help bring, number one, people in. And it was developed densely, that location. You could fit a lot of housing units, you have access to transit, it's something that makes sense. Pathways are a big thing, I think back to when I was growing up in Brighton, there was a lot of, Township went through a big phase of building paths about 2004, 2005. And it's something we've done here, but it was nice to be able to bike downtown as a teenager to go get your haircut or go, go Dairy Queen or go do something. It's something where we're still sort of getting there and we're getting there fast, but how do we make that easier for people along the corridor while also making it safe and also making it safe to cross?
Well, I think Jackson Road, since, we do have things on there, but it's not where we're in a city already that's built up and it's harder to develop when there's already development there, to change the character and whatnot. So we have a lot of open places. There's, old buildings that could be taken down, for those extra drive-throughs, right? No, all kidding aside. So we have the new pickleball. Is that Medi or?
Yes,
Medi.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would like to see some type of sports complex, promote more team sports, tennis, not outdoor pickleball, there's too many issues with that, but volleyball, it could even be soccer, like wide world sports. I played soccer there for a long time. I coached many teams and that was always a great thing because it's all year long. I would love to see bowling again. And if we could have like a pocket along, maybe not next to residential, but enough or close enough where they could walk down there, that would be great. I would love to see real parks. And, I know we call our parks are more, trails.
Nature
preserves. And they're, to me, especially when you have little kids, I think you do, to take your child to a park that has swings and, to connect with the other little children, get to know people. So more family entertainment. But as I said before, grocery stores that are even the farmer market type thing, we could promote more of our local farmers. We want to have our local meats and eggs and that type of thing, and then we can promote our farmers and kind of keep it all together. But I think, the blank slate is really, I think that's the gem because it's the canvas we can paint on. And if it was already painted, we'd have to have a lot more work and,
I think we have an opportunity now to define the areas that might be considered walkable, downtown-ish. Pick spots on a map. Is it Jackson Plaza for redevelopment? Is it somewhere west of Myers, close?
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm on the south side.
No, but, okay.
I'm on the south side, okay? Intentionally, because as long as we say stuff is on both sides, then you're always got this problem of getting across there. But we could define specific areas for redevelopment that would concentrate where houses are, where you're gonna have restaurants, some parks, some entertainment. Let's define those areas and then build to it. Because if we never define in this entire however many miles, then it will always be some here, some there. And so I personally would like to focus on the south side because you get rid of that problem of getting across Jackson Road. Or you pick specific areas that you want to concentrate, and that specific area is where you improve the crossover.
On both sides then.
To both sides.
Yeah.
But if you define where that should be, and you have this similar development or parks on the other side, then instead of saying, how do we get across Jackson in this 5 mile? How do we get across Jackson in this 1/4 mile section here and here? So it's more trying to find, where do you want it to be? Where do you want the sense of downtown? In the sense of, there's roads off of Jackson Road, and that's what led me to think about Jackson Plaza, because it already has, you know, a flow to it. And don't put pickleball courts outside by residential, because people across the United States are complaining about the noise. Oh my gosh, they really can't stand it. They said it sounds like a shot every time. So this meeting is an opportunity. I'm feeling hopeful. I've sort of entertained this mixed use, residential and commercial, not commercial and industrial. About a couple of years ago, when the suburban / Lithia project came to us, and I was against it, and I suggested we think about some housing in that area. And there was a lot of pushback. There was some pushback, I shouldn't even say a lot. There was some pushback from the planning commissioners who could not envision that idea. One problem was it was right on the freeway. Who's going to want to live on the freeway? Well, a lot of people live on the freeway as the development of Oak Valley on 94 has occurred. But anyway, it was a new idea, a new concept, and there was no room for it. And so I'm really glad to be here at this opportunity to meet with you and hear all these ideas. And I'm hoping that the opportunity turns into a working group, because we need the planning commission. We've been talking about these things for a year or more, sidewalks, pedestrian, et cetera. And so to take that into action, we need the DDA, and we need the Board of Trustees, and Madam Manager, we need you too, to start to make it happen. You know, chunk by chunk, section by section, whatever it is we want to do and how. So I would propose that this opportunity we've had today to come together, that we create a working group to keep the opportunities open and get started on where we're going to go. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some years, but I'm glad everybody came today, because I really think this meeting gives us an opportunity to start what we all sounds like everybody's interested in doing.
I think we have a great opportunity to add affordable housing along the Jackson Road corridor. I think it's a huge issue. You know, I think with either rezoning or form-based zoning, I think we should have at least a minimum, anybody who comes in, a minimum 2 to 3 stories. So we're not going to listen to you know, developments that come in that are 1 story. It's going to have to be 2 to 3 stories. We're going to start going up, and we're going to start adding residential units that hopefully will be affordable, or at least bring the pricing down for rents or, you know, for condos. Attainable. So I think we have a great opportunity. It is along a transit corridor. I think it's perfect for, you know, just new redevelopment there that's going to be at least a minimum of 2 or 3 stories just to start. So I think that's exactly where it should occur, is along the Jackson Road corridor.
Would you use a density bonus?
I don't even, no bonuses. It's going to be a minimum requirement.
Required.
Yep. Anybody who comes in.
And then maybe you could do density bonuses on top of that.
Yeah, if you want to go on top of that.
The economies of scale for the developer is they need to be able to get as many units to make money.
If they build a really tall building, but it's all market rate, then you're not really getting affordability. I was just thinking, you know, you can build up, we want you to build up this much, but if you go this much, you know, we'll give you the density bonus. You can go that much higher, but it has to be this much affordable.
No, affordability.
And, you know, and again, it's a suggestion, because we only have so many REUs also.
Right.
But I think this is the place that we should be increasing our density is along, a transit corridor. And this is how we can hopefully address some of the affordability issues.
Now, if you target spaces where that happens, then that becomes your restaurant,
Yeah.
entertainment.
Absolutely.
And that will help.
And
Retail below,
instead of
residential
a
above.
6-story building, apartment Plaza and another one a mile down the road, if they were grouped, it's more cohesive.
And I think that would help us monitor our REU as well, like if we have this set out on both sides and how much REUs, then we can have another similar down here because of the, yeah. Because if we
It's
just.
gonna be dictated by the opportunity property.
Well, yeah, and we had a conversation a while ago about how can we change the look of Jackson Road, Jackson Road, and you said something about changing the ordinance to bring in more retail, like that's how, because then that's when it's, I don't think you use marketed, but the developers that are looking to develop would see, oh, this is what Scio wants. Is that what I remember our conversation? Because right now they can come in and say, okay, here's C4 and this is what we can put. And we're like, well, we want our Jackson Road to look different, but we have to allow them under the C4 zoning, right?
Yeah, I don't exactly recall that, but we probably were talking about like form-based ideas that we're more interested in kind of what the form of the structure than the use of the structure, and to encourage, for a variety of land uses so that it's not just this is C2, this is office, this is industrial.
That's why we have to move fast.
Yeah, so we need to change the ordinances
Prime
fast,
for
right?
development.
We don't want all self-storage facilities.
I'm with you, Mr. Supervisor.
Put another car wash.
Or drive-throughs.
Or another car wash.
Let's keep moving.
Okay, anything
Chris,
else,
that was
Chris?
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, and, I also think that the redevelopment that supports carbon neutrality, and I mean, all of this walkability and so forth and density, all of that does, but I think along with that, we also need to look at how we can include renewables and some of those other things in this. So it's really looking at that carbon neutral future.
Mr.
I
Hyde
think
wanted to
Bob,
speak.
yeah.
Bob.
Okay, several people have been talking about this very thing, and that is what I was alluding to earlier, and that was we have the opportunity to cluster different uses in a common area, and in order to get the synergy of walkability, storefronts, high density, residential, and we can do that with form-based. Like Jeff was saying, I think you were saying that we could do what Pittsfield did, only we could learn from what they did and make it our way. So if we wanted to make it courtyards like Ryan is saying, or we want to make it Carytown like somebody else brought up, we can discuss how we can cluster these uses in different areas. And I think, Kathleen, you were saying we would maybe do it all, pick an area that we want to do it on. But what we can do is we can define different areas where we want this to be the industrial area, this to be the residential retail area combination. So that's what the opportunity for doing form-based and also adding the uses that we permit in different areas. I think Pittsfield did that, didn't they, Jan?
I'd just like to add one thing. I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the meeting. We have 2 more hours after this. Just kidding. Clerk Jessica Flintoff did call me just before this meeting, and she sent her regrets. She wanted to be here. She couldn't make it. She was with one of her sons. I think they were doing something. But I just wanted to so she didn't just not come. She called me and said she wanted to be here. So I forgot to mention. I just wanted everybody to know. Thank you. She wanted to be here.
Yeah, I had just a couple of things. I think this is the opportunity to redefine mixed use, number one. And also, there's an asset that Scio has, and we have this whole little linkage of reuse shops and so forth. And I'm trying to think of, how can that become a part of this, sort of culture too of, it doesn't all have to be new and shiny, but we really make use of what we've got.
Yeah.
The other thing that we do have is not everything has to be redeveloped, maybe in, maybe the heights and so forth in certain areas, but I think about what Holmes did with, some of those industrial buildings too. I think, and those are very successful, Session was very successful. So it's not, so I think if we could really look at that, where does this density go, and then and that will also support some of these more creative opportunities too, but not, and so we need some of those areas for the reuse shops. We need some of those areas for the urban wood. And because we're so close to, the rural piece, I think the linkage with the local food and so forth, support what is best in Scio, kind of along the
More
road.
Matawi Tile Works.
Yes, Matawi Tile Works. I mean, some of these very unique businesses. How do you do that and not lose it to, more national brands and stuff? Yeah, how do we keep that unique? We have that opportunity to.
You're gonna do a lightning round of threats?
Lightning round of threats. The only good thing I can say about threats is it's sort of an odd category, to be honest. Oh,
Yes.
It's not true.
I'm not offended at all, thank you.
Okay, so Will is right, this is our lightning round. Usually threats are the quickest because we already kind of talked about weaknesses and they kind of merge together.
I just want to say it's 9:45.
We gotta get through this. Anybody
I'm
wants to
leaving at
leave?
10.
Anybody wants to leave, they can leave.
Doug, give us a threat,
Yeah, we're
an
gonna.
example.
Okay, sewer capacity.
Sure, get this shit done around.
Yeah, this could be very quick, but I would say sewer capacity. Is it that? That's a big thing. Maybe there's not a lot, maybe there's, lighted conditions could be a threat to the corridor. So just raise your hands, we don't have to go around table, but, Jeff.
The MDOT and WCRC.
Yeah, road commission, MDOT.
Yep.
It ain't our road.
Yeah.
Not letting us do things.
I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and state regulations around the roads.
What about sort of the creep of the auto dealership function sort of spreading further westward?
Okay. Else, just raise your hand.
I was gonna say lack of clarity from the township on what we wanted. I mean, we're working to solve that, but that was one of my biggest learning curves. No offense to Planning Commissioner Doug, it's just
I have one.
process was very confusing as to what the township wanted.
It's by right zoning.
Reactive instead of proactive.
Complacency.
Oh, just saying, sorry.
I said by right zoning. In other words, if they want to do something that's industrial that comports with it, they get to do something whether we want it or not. So it's kind of the corollary to what we want there. Doesn't matter if what we want there is what we've zoned there. And if what they want there is in our zoning, they get to do it. So by right zoning is a threat.
Complacency. We have to move, people. We're hot. Developers want to come here, people buying land. We only got so much left on Jackson. There's so, so we have to be,
If we look at the property ownership of those parcels along Jackson, you start to see some patterns.
Yes.
Who's buying it up?
During a pre-app meeting, I suggested to one of the developers, RAAR, Brower or something. I said, you know, that other parcel you got, we're looking for some residential on it. And he said that he had looked into that 7 years ago. I said, well, we're really interested in some residential. And then he finally said, well, I'll take a look at it again. So we'll see. And I think that's the kind of stuff, you know, I don't have a problem talking to people, so I didn't even know who they were, but.
Any other threats?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that there's a threat from within. We're not, there's a threat of not going, there's a threat of making excuses, believing that car dependency is a necessity within our township due to its rural nature, it's spread out.
So Doug, not compliance,
Sorry,
complacency.
complacency, yeah, you said complacency.
You wrote.
It says compliance.
Compliancy.
Complacency.
He's working on it.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not such a good speller.
He's trying to type fast.
We'll edit it later.
I've tried to capture some stuff. I'll just send it to you.
Looking for action.
Okay, any other threats before we close up? Anybody? any
Doug, I
thoughts?
think politics are a threat.
Yeah, politics can be a threat. If a developer thinks the political environment is unstable, they won't come here. I mean, I've heard it.
Or if we can't get our act together, we might not be able to sort of align around these goals that we're setting out.
Yeah, well, here, this is another example, and I have been, and I know, Kim, that you brought, this was your idea, but I've been saying over and over again, the chairs of the committees need to be talking or have a committee along with the department heads and the manager and then the BOT, because I see ideas in different places, but they're not congruent with other ideas. And I'm not saying that one idea is better than the other, but we need to, come to a middle ground. And we're not gonna be able to do that if we're off doing our own thing.
Yeah, you don't
So-
get, you can't,
Yeah,
you don't build enough momentum to get anything done.
I think
Or you're
chain
working against each other.
businesses, chain businesses like corporate kind of.
Yeah.
That, I mean, we fended off a dollar store from one of the outlots near a few years ago, but we won't always win those battles. And I think actually there's a restaurant that's opening up that's, kind of more like what we're looking for, right? It has games, it has games and it's more family. That's what what's the one that what's where the standard used to be?
Sam Hill, not
Sam
Slim
Hill.
Chicken,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I have Sally wants to say, Sally, you had your hand up, did you still have your hand up?
Yeah, infrastructure redundancy is a threat as well, or lack of redundancy, I should say.
Yeah, resilience. Yeah, lack of resilience. Yeah.
Is that like sewer line?
It's like if your sewer line breaks and you don't have another one,
Sewer line.
Correct.
Infrastructure resilience.
and you're in deep doo-doo.
More than you want.
And then Sally.
I think funding too. I mean, just, I think that's.
Funding?
Funding.
The money? Yes. for that.
Sally, anything else? Nope. And then
That
Bob-
was all I wanted to add.
Yep, and then Bob Hyde had his hand up also. Maybe.
That was a great meeting.
Okay, any other? Yep, go, and, Rob, I believe that's you. Yep, go ahead. Okay. No other hands up on the line?
Okay,
Final words for the cause?
thank you everyone for the time and.
I have a final question. If we, what are next steps? Let's say we want to try some forms-based mixed use. Do we do that? Do we try it in this section? Do we try it in this section? Do we do the ordinance? When do we do, what are the next steps and when are they?
So what we did before with the master plan was we had a master plan implementation committee. And I'm not saying you need to do exactly that, but you could have a subcommittee of the planning commission and you could draw in people from outside the planning commission as well, just like with the sustainability task force. And form the working group that
Because it would be nice to have some business representation too. I mean,
Yeah.
even though we don't have quite that balance.
Well, what I think and what we've tried to do a little bit on the DDA after we only meet every other month, and always get a lot of time, is we try and understand the issue, we try and take some action on it, whether we're not going to move forward with it for one reason or another, whether we're going to take some step towards the next step of the process. I think that's something that sometimes happens is there's a lot of discussion, a lot of information shared, but we don't take next steps. So that was actually gonna be my question. Mr. Reiser hadn't asked it specifically, what are we gonna do to sort of move this forward?
Well,
Maybe formulate a working group.
well, that could be, I'm gonna summarize our comments tonight and try to come up with some actions. And those actions will be discussed at the planning commission, perhaps township board. And that could lead to any of these items. Now, I initially believe these would lead to either one or two things. One, maybe a sub-area review of the Jackson Road corridor plan. But if we think that plan is okay, which I think it probably is, we could probably launch into some ordinance amendments to the Jackson Road corridor, whether that's a form-based code or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think summarize this report, get back with the planning commission, and then we'll go from there. But I
I
think
like your idea about the overlay.
Yeah.
The form-based code being overlay, because we can start with something, create that a lot easier than redoing our whole zoning.
and bringing the DDA in, I think, maybe the DDA just has to step up its game, it's sort of slowed, from what I understand, it's slowed down. It used to meet every month and then it went to every other month, but
Like that.
we could just meet more often and do more work. And the good thing about having the
Some of that
DDA
money coming
engaged
in.
is that its focus is that area and it has some resources that it can put into
Financially,
doing things.
we have right now, I think it's the last financial report I saw, 1.2, we get money every year, so.
Yeah.
Some of that's spoken for, but not all.
how much?
There's about 1.12 in the account right now.
We just have to pay off our bonds.
We have to pay off our bonds, yeah, 1.1, 1.2 million, we get about $500,000 to $600,000 a year. I'd have to ask Sandy to be sure, but that was what I was told last time was our revenue, so there's money to help with it.
There's money left over after the bonds are paid
Yes.
for each year, so.
Yes.
All right, well, with that, I'll, someone wanna make a motion to adjourn?
So moved. You're here.
Lots of support? All right, all those in favor? Aye, thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to meet you. Sorry, I was so sweaty when I showed up. I was a little late leaving the house.
So, yeah, thanks, Rob.
My light, law and that light.
So they answered your question that you tried to ask me?
Good, congratulations.
Yeah, I'm still.
Exactly.
You already get restaurants.